This is Module 5, Encourage the Heart. It is my presentation on inclusive leadership. My name is Chris Gardner. The first slide is a video I found that talks about setting up inclusive leadership in schools. It's about a 5-minute video. Then the second slide, I'll go right into the second slide with a video on inclusive leadership inside a school in Alberta schools. So I'll let you watch those two videos and then we'll talk about inclusive leadership and its role in education.
In the words of Martin Luther King Jr., humankind has advanced technologically to conquer outer space, but humankind has not had the moral commitment to conquer their inner space. Cultural proficiency theorists tell us that creating a culturally proficient school or district requires culturally courageous leadership, so the values, actions, and voice of the principal are paramount to an inclusive school. What specific actions can the school leader initiate and maintain to ensure inclusivity and to deepen understanding of its importance and how it directly impacts student achievement?
Yesterday, I had the opportunity of visiting one of our schools. I had a conversation with a young man, and I said to him, what do you think as leaders in our school systems, what can we do to make sure that more and more students make good success? And he said to me, just do it, man. Stop talking about it. I would challenge you that when you go back to your system, the question should be, what does a school look like? If I were to visit one of your schools, what would I see? What practices would be there to convey to me that this is an environment where we truly believe that every single child in that building has an opportunity to make a success?
So how do we grant the student's wish and just do it? Where do we begin? In Jim Ryan's view, leadership is inclusive both in its nature and the ends for which it strives. Unlike many perspectives on leadership that see it in terms of gifted or powerful individuals, this view conceives of leadership as a communal process, one in which all members of school communities are involved or represented in equitable ways. The process itself is inclusive in that everyone has a right to contribute. The ends for which it strives are also inclusive.
The culturally proficient leader is one who takes responsibility for one's own learning, has vision for what a school can be, effectively shares the vision with others, assesses one's own assumptions and beliefs, and understands the structural and organic nature of schools. In our board, that goal is supporting teachers to improve student achievement and success through assessment-based and differentiated instruction to meet the needs of all learners by successfully engaging community in that shared goal and doing so in a safe and respectful learning environment. We have to know where we are in order to know where we need to go. We see where we can continue our work towards greatness with the recognition that there is no complete or essential knowledge, but rather a continuum of growing complexity that brings us to understand diversity, whether visible or invisible, in our schools.
I do, though, want to push us on challenging ourselves. We spent the last year at every family of schools meeting, devoting time to saying things, to actually saying them, that were uncomfortable for us. We have to get down to the very grassroots about ourselves before we can really be comfortable enough to deal with things in the way that you want as they are at your school. That's hard work for all of us, and there's a level of self-awareness and honesty that comes from deep work, but it takes time.
The journey begins with challenging our own personal beliefs and values.
What do we do that contributes to the injustice of someone else? And we got to have a conversation with ourselves about the way we were raised, the way we were educated, the traditions and values and beliefs that we hold, the traditions that we are going to perpetuate. Some of them we're going to have to plow under, not necessarily for our own sakes, but for the children that follow us. Because what we leave them, they're born into our tradition, what we give them. So literally the hard work is at the level of challenging the beliefs. That's the hard work. That's where the real work is. Because once you get that in line, the rest will follow.
Changing the structures will not change your belief. Changing your belief will change structures, because our actions only come out of the belief. Our jobs as leaders is to help children and teachers to believe in themselves and what they can do. If teachers don't believe that they are capable, then they're not. High or low expectations, they'll rise or fall to them. When you engage in conversations around racism, sexism, ageism, homophobia, you name it, you Come to the conversation in a reciprocal manner, not power over. So your titles mean nothing. We want you to engage in a conversation with one another, human being to human being, spirit to spirit.
Okay, and now the next video is Alberta schools in Canada have adopted an inclusive leadership within their school district.
Started working with the Board of Trustees and the community on realigning our 3-year education plan. So we have 3 goals instead of having 27 or 30 of them. And was very mindful with the second goal, inclusion of all students, and talk a lot with staff about what that means in terms of not just students with special education needs, but we're talking the student who's living on the street in downtown Red Deer. We're talking our First Nations children, wide diversity, and making sure we include all of those students and have a place for them.
I think our starting point should always be, what do we have in common? To me, that's the biggest underlying principle of inclusion.
But it's a matter of, I guess, just informing people, creating that empathy for the range of learners out there, and rather than looking at where can we place them, know that they're in the right place in the classroom and that we need to develop those skills in order to meet the needs of those students. One of the initiatives that we have this year to support all our diverse learners is the Diverse Learning Teacher, and every school in our district has at least a half-time allocation for supporting those learners, and then things like English language learners, FNMI. So as the complexities increase, so does the support from our department.
A lot of, I think, what's required is reinforcing what people are already doing well, and providing that feedback about the ways that schools are really supporting their students well, and looking at one manageable next step.
Certainly funding allows us some opportunities to provide different experiences for students, different support for students. But within the dollars that we do have, I think that our work is to challenge ourselves around how do we align our resources to best support our priorities.
We're still at the beginning of the journey. We will never be done. We need to keep pushing the boundaries of this for success for all students.
It's about shifting culture and shifting attitudes, and I see that in our schools. And I know that from the Board of Trustees right down to the classroom teacher, there's a growing passion for making sure we do this work properly.
Okay, so we look at then how does leadership and education go together? Tying in inclusive leadership in the education process, tying in just leadership in the education process. I think Jim Ryan said in that first video the best, where he said, leadership is naturally inclusive, and I would feel the same way in education as well. I think education and leadership go hand in hand. From the leadership styles that we looked at this year, most of those styles, when you look at those different leadership styles, a vast majority of them include some sort of input. The early one, the science theory, really didn't include some input, but most of them include some input or some inclusion and collaboration, which I believe education is the same way. So we look at leadership and education. The things I believe about education, I think education is a relationship. I think education needs to be based on a common vision, a collaboration, a process, and then striving toward that common vision. And then, empowering the people to achieve, lead, and contribute. Not only the students in the classroom, but also the staff, both teaching and non-teaching staff. We need to empower those people to achieve and lead and contribute throughout the community and things like that. That's another vast part of leadership. I think when you talk about leadership in the educational world, you've got to include the stakeholders of the community, especially the involved ones, because a lot of communities, the school is the main focus of it. When you get into your rural communities especially, the schools are the main focus of that community. And so you have to include the stakeholders from the community in the process of the common vision of the school, and that's leadership, and that's inclusive leadership. You know, they talk about the Alberta, the second slide, talking about not just the students that need special services, but also the students that may sleep on the street or have a language barrier or things like that. Inclusive leadership is going to take that through. So when you look at these three things that I believe education is, okay, what if we just put the word leadership in for education? Leadership is a relationship, common vision, collaboration, striving for a common vision, and empowering people to achieve, lead, and contribute. And I think they go hand in hand that way. You know, looking at the different scenarios and throughout the book and the leadership things that we talked about in the different chapters, that is, if you just flip-flop those words, they're the same thing. And so they are intertwined throughout that. And inclusive leadership tends to allow that because it brings people from all different areas and allows them a voice into the leadership process. Now, doing that is going to create some challenges. When you look at the challenges, first and foremost, you have to have a committed leader. The leader, if you want inclusive leadership in your school, it's got to start at the top, and they have to walk the talk. They have to not just say, we're going to do inclusive leadership, now go do this, but they have to be committed to inclusive leadership as well, and make sure that it's being followed up on, and the training and things like that, and the teachers and the people are getting the resources and training that they need. One thing you cannot have is conflicted teams. Because sometimes, you know, if not everyone is committed to diversity and inclusion, then you're going to have conflicted teams, and you're not going to get the full diversity, and you're not going to get the inclusion of everybody into it. And really, with inclusive leadership, that's a key, is you cannot have conflicted teams, because conflicted teams will not all follow the way, and so then the outcome is not near what it could be. You have to watch about the loudest voice ruling. You know, one thing about inclusion is that everybody gets a chance. Everybody gets different backgrounds, diversity, all that. They all get a chance to collaborate and work towards this common vision, and not just the one that talks all the time, because then you tend to go away from inclusion of other areas and just start to go to the person that's speaking the loudest. And then kind of going with the loudest voice rules is the first person. Usually the first person that speaks tends to then take a person or take that group in the way that they want to go. And that's not true inclusion. Inclusion is you got to sit back and you've got to make sure we're including everybody on that and not swaying any certain way, but then, you know, coming together and making sure we envelop everybody rather than just pull someone away and have people get on. So the first person advantage is the first person gets to speak, you got to get it started, but then everybody needs a chance to speak, and everybody needs a chance to put in their collaboration on it, so that it stays with the diversity and inclusion of everyone. I think inclusive leadership, again, is a lot like a lot of the leadership styles that we talked about during this class. I think it's a great fit for education, because education is a very diverse career. It's a very diverse program, and you're going to have different cultures and socioeconomic backgrounds and learning styles and language barriers and things like that, and you've got to include them all in the general common vision that you want the school to go, because if you don't, then you're going to be pulling people a different way instead of leading them. So, thank you.